Professor, good to see you, and thank you very much for joining us at this hour. This looks like a double-edged sword situation. America is doubling its assault on the Houthis, and the Houthis have vowed to continue their attacks on Israel's ships in the Red Sea until they stop the war in Gaza. So what is that one thing that can bring both the US and Yemen to calm down and even possibly talk?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be on your program. Obviously, the situation in the Red Sea and Yemen escalating. The Trump administration's decision to attack this oil terminal signals huge escalation on Washington's part. I think that the only real way to bring lasting security to the Red Sea and to end the Houthi maritime attacks effectively would be for a ceasefire in Gaza. The Trump administration obviously is not putting pressure on Israel to achieve a ceasefire right now. So I think that the Red Sea is going to remain a very insecure, very volatile body of water for the foreseeable future. The Trump administration seems to think that if they really just double down on the failed policies of the Biden administration, that they're going to have some success in terms of achieving quote-unquote deterrence over Ansar Allah. I'm quite skeptical that this is going to work.
Professor Cafiero, there is the Iran angle to what is happening in Yemen or in West Asia. If the nuclear talks do not yield any results, what's going to happen in this region, and especially Yemen?
Well, there's no doubt that obviously the number one international backer of the Houthis is Iran. And I think we all know that over the years, Iran has leveraged its ties with the Houthis to counter regional and international foes. I think in the event that there is some sort of a breakthrough and the JCPOA 2.0, if you will, is reached, that could open the door to not a good relationship between the U.S. and Iran. I don't think there's going to be any rapprochement between the two countries, but I think that could at least open the door to a greater dialogue between Washington and Tehran about non-nuclear issues, and I think Yemen could certainly be one of those. But if the nuclear talks are to collapse in acrimony, potentially if there is an extreme scenario whereby the U.S. or Israel launches attacks against Iran, I have no doubt that Tehran would certainly leverage its relationship with Ansar Allah as a way of countering the U.S. and Israel. I think in light of the weakening of the axis of resistance last year with severe blows that Hezbollah suffered in the fall of the Syrian government of Assad, the Houthis right now stand out probably as the strongest leg within the axis of resistance. So yeah, I certainly think that if there is going to be a military confrontation between the US and Iran that might follow a collapse of the nuclear talks in Muscat and Rome, the Houthis would probably be very relevant to that. But hopefully there will be a diplomatic breakthrough and we will see tensions between the U.S. and Iran decrease, but time will tell.
Time will tell indeed. Professor Cafiero, and very quickly, we've seen a sort of blame game between Yemen and the United States over the downing of the MQ-9 Reaper drones. What would be your reaction to that? What does this indicate?
Well, over the years, really going back to 2015 when the Saudi-led military campaign against the Houthis started, Ansar Allah has gained many, many capabilities. Technologically, the movement has become more and more advanced. We've seen this from the Houthis before. They clearly have the means to shoot down enemy drones, and it's really a sign of the capabilities of the Houthis militarily speaking. And I think it really speaks to the extent to which this rebel movement has evolved over the years into a very capable fighting force. And it's not easy for the U.S., as we know, to achieve some sort of decisive victory over the Houthis. As I said, it's a very disciplined fighting force with capabilities that seem to be advancing with every year that passes by.
Professor Kafiero, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for you making time for us today and for talking to us today.
Thank you.
And at least 2 people have been killed. Several others have been injured in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, in additional airstrikes that the Houthi media blamed on the US. And this is after the deadliest attack of Washington's 15-month campaign against the Houthis. American strikes on a Yemeni fuel port killed at least 80 people and wounded 150 others. Now, in the past 24 hours itself, the Iran-backed Houthis claim to have downed 2 US Air Force MQ-9 Reaper surveillance and attack drones over western Yemen. But so far, which have been confirmed by the US. It makes the drone the 6th of its kind to be shot down by the rebel group since the 3rd of March and the 21st to be downed by the Houthis since the 7th of October 2023. The US president has ordered a ramp-up of strikes last month in what's now the largest American military operation in the region since he took office in January earlier this year. The US military said the strikes on Ras Isa aimed to cut off supplies and funds for the Houthi rebels that control large swathes of the Arabian Peninsula's poorest country. Yemeni sources say there were many civilians among the dead, including employees of the Safer Oil Company and the Yemen Petroleum Company. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that he's gravely concerned about airstrikes conducted by the United States in Yemen over the course of the 17th and 18th of this month. In a statement, Guterres' spokesperson, Stephen Dujarric, highlighted how the strikes on Ras Isa resulted in scores of casualties, including 5 humanitarian workers who were injured. He also expressed fear of damage to the port and possible oil leaks into the Red Sea, calling on the Houthis to halt their ongoing missile and drone attacks on both Israel and shipping in the Red Sea immediately.
Now, dramatic footage of the April 18th U.S. airstrikes on Yemeni oil port have come to fore. The video captured by Turkish sailors aboard the Mount Palm oil tanker shows the Ras Isa port of Yemen burning in flames. Now, these strikes are part of a broader campaign aimed at degrading Houthi capabilities in the region by the U.S. Here's a report.
All right, Yemen is under intense attack. Over 70 people have died in the overnight aerial attack on Yemen's fuel port. Houthis say that more than 170 people have sustained injuries. The airstrike sparked a massive explosion and fires. The Iran-backed rebels say that paramedic and civilians workers at the port killed in the attack. Well, these are images of the aftermath of deadly U.S. strikes on the Ras Isa fuel port located along the west coast of Yemen on the Red Sea. The U.S. Central Command confirmed the strikes but did not acknowledge any casualties. Well, the U.S. military says that the attack on the fuel port is aimed to cut off a source of supplies and funds for the Iran-backed group. The USS Harry S. Truman and USS Carl Vinson are leading the aerial attack on Yemen. Since March 15th, American jets have been regularly bombing Houthi targets. Houthis have vowed to hit back at intensifying U.S. raids. The Iran-backed group claims it targeted 2 U.S. aircraft carriers.
The missile force, the unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, and the naval forces carried out a double military operation targeting the U.S. aircraft carriers Truman and Vinson and their warships in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, with a number of cruise missiles and drones. This was the first operation against the Vinson since its arrival in the Arabian Sea.
Houthis say it also targeted a military site near Israel's Ben Gurion airport in the occupied Jaffa area. Yemen's Houthis have launched more than 20 ballistic missiles and several drones at Israel. France, on the other hand, claims a French frigate shot down a drone fired from Yemen that was targeting shipping routes in the Red Sea. The images released by the French military shows the ship spotting and shooting the drone before it fell into the sea. The French ship is part of EU's APSIDES mission securing shipping corridors in the high-traffic region. French ships have shot down drones in the region, but this was the first in several months. The rebels possess surface-to-air missiles such as the Iranian-made 358 missiles capable of downing the aircraft. While Iran denies arming the rebels, Tehran-manufactured weapons have been found in Yemen. Demonstrations have erupted in Yemen's capital. Thousands are seen demonstrating in Sana'a to show support with the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and also demonstrate against US strikes on Yemen. Meanwhile, Iran has condemned US airstrikes on the fuel port, calling it barbaric. The Iran-backed group says Hamas denounced blatant aggression after US strikes at the Yemeni fuel port.
And Yemen is under intense attack. At least 80 people have died in the overnight aerial attacks by the United States. Houthis say that more than 170 people have sustained injuries. This is the drone footage from Yemen's Ras Isa fuel port, which was attacked by the US. Burnt vehicles, damaged structures show the extent of destruction in the attack. Earlier, the airstrikes had sparked a massive explosion and fires. The Iran-backed rebels say the paramedic and civilians at the port were killed in the attack. The U.S. Central Command confirmed the strikes but did not acknowledge any casualties. The U.S. military says that the attack on the fuel port is aimed to cut off a source of supplies and funds for the Iran-backed group. Videos from the U.S. Central Command show the decks of aircraft carriers lit up day and night, with jets being launched in relentless waves. American soldiers are loading missiles and bombs on fighter jets. The USS Harry S. Truman and USS Carl Vinson are leading the aerial attack on Yemen. Since March 15th, American jets have been regularly bombing Houthi targets. Israel says that it intercepted yet another missile from Yemen. The Houthis have regularly fired ballistic missiles towards Israel as retaliation against American assault. The French military released a video of the French frigate in the Red Sea shooting down a drone fired from Yemen. People can be heard shouting military orders in French as explosion and a cloud of smoke is seen in the distance. Since March 18th, when the Israeli military resumed its offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yemen's Houthi rebels have launched more than 20 ballistic missiles and several drones at Israel. About half of the missiles fell short of Israel, while others set off sirens in the country before being shot down. Meanwhile, Iran has condemned the U.S. strikes on the Yemeni fuel port as barbaric. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Bakai described the attack as an aggressive crime and a blatant violation of the UN Charter. Hamas too condemned the strikes, calling it a full-fledged war crime and a gross violation of Yemeni sovereignty. Thousands of Yemenis took to the streets of the capital Sana'a to protest the U.S. strikes targeting Houthi rebels. Protesters were seen holding banners and chanted slogans in solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza.
In Yemen's Houthis continue their relentless attacks on Israel and US aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman. 2 days after Israel attacked Hodeidah in response to the Houthi strike on Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, Houthis have now claimed to have launched a drone attack on Israel's Ramon Airport. Fresh attacks come a day after US President announced a ceasefire deal with the Iran-backed group.
The UAV force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out 2 military operations. The first targeted the Zionist enemy's Ramon Airport in the al-Rashrash area in southern occupied Palestine using 2 drones.
Ramon Airport is located in southern Israel near the Gulf of Aqaba. It is the second biggest airport after Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. Attacks are escalating between Israel and the Houthis since Israel began its military offensive against Hamas in Gaza. Israel is yet to officially confirm or deny the Houthi strike on the southern airport. Houthis also claimed to have hit US aircraft carrier Truman that is deployed in the Red Sea, and Houthis said that they have shot down at least 16 Reaper drones since the onset of Israel-Hamas war. Now, on the other hand, over 800 Houthi targets have been struck since the 15th of March. Houthi spokesman said that this operation was carried out before US announced the ceasefire. Houthi-US ceasefire deal is holding up for now, but the Iran-backed group has made it clear that Israel is not part of any ceasefire agreement and it will continue to strike Israeli assets in the Red Sea and beyond.
The US is hammering the Houthis with near daily strikes for the last 43 days to end the threat to vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In the latest, US strikes have hit a migrant detention center in the Houthis' stronghold of Saada, killing at least 68 people. Here's a report which tells you how US striking African migrants has sparked massive outrage.
U.S. intensifies its military campaign against Houthis. U.S. aircraft carried out a strike in northern Yemen, marking a dramatic escalation in the conflict. The target, what military officials describe as a Houthi-controlled weapon depot, but what was hit was something else.
These are strikes by the American Zionist aviation in Saada Governorate on the detention center. These are innocent prisoners who have no connection, and they are in tens, if not in hundreds, still under the rubble and torn to shreds.
They hit the African's hangar. We received various surgical cases, ranging from moderate to critical to mild. Medical services were provided, and we are now sorting cases. Some cases were transferred to the surgery department for treatment, while others are being treated on site.
The images show the scale of destruction at the migrant detention center hit by U.S. The center housed African migrants, mostly Ethiopians and Somalis. The Houthi-run Interior Ministry says some 115 migrants had been detained at the site. The strike in the Saada Governorate, a Houthi stronghold, is the latest incident during a decade of conflict to kill African migrants who risk crossing Yemen for a chance to work in neighboring Saudi Arabia. The U.S. military's Central Command, responsible for military operations in Yemen, refuses to offer details of its extensive airstrike campaign. But it acknowledges carrying out more than 800 hits under Operation Rough Rider on targets in Yemen since mid-March, killing more than 250 people in airstrikes.
Activists already have warned that this intense airstrike campaign was killing civilians, but the U.S. government hasn't acknowledged that, and this attack is going to draw even more attention to those claims.
The attack comes after US hit an important oil port held by Houthis on April 19, killing more than 70 people. It was the first American attack on a Houthi-controlled oil facility in the US bombing campaign. But the Houthis are unrelenting. They have shot down 7 US MQ-9 Reaper drones in a big jolt to the US defense system. The Iran-backed group is seeking to control the flow of information from their territory to the outside world. Houthis has issued a warning to Starlink satellite internet receivers, asking them to quickly hand over the devices to authorities. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Iran-backed Houthi rebels have claimed that US strikes in Yemen's capital Sana'a have killed at least 8 people and wounded several others. According to the Houthi media, the strikes were reported in Thaqban area in Bani al-Har Directorate. The Houthis also reported other US strikes on their stronghold of Sada and the northern Amran